morning, everyone. This is update for August 16, 2022, day 174 of the war and of the date update. Today we're going to discuss actually one political news internal in Ukraine. So there were a lot of accusations in Ukraine internally, accusations of Ukrainian president that he knew that Russia was going to attack, starting from about September-October timeframe. To be fair, it probably was even much earlier. It was very clear since about April 2021 that attack is imminent. But the point is that he knew all of the details, right? Details how the Russian troops are going to be attacking and so on. And he received almost like precise Russian plan of attack in the end of January. And at the same time, internally, the message to the population was, okay, it's all not true. Russia is not attacking us. Keep going, keep moving, keep working. Don't pay attention to this. All of this, everything is wonderful and fine. So as a result, many people were sort of, let's say, believed that and were relaxed. And the tragedies that happened to civilian population in Ukraine are largely blamed for these messages that were effectively causing unnecessary deaths among civilian population. So as a result of that, there's a lot of internal sort of discussion or accusations of the president and his group of people, which obviously includes Yermak, and then Arestovich is another one. There is one more. His name is Arhamia. So they were sort of refuting all of this, information that the Russian attack is imminent. And so now they actually came out with very pathetic explanation of why they were doing it. And so the explanation was, okay, if we didn't do it, Ukraine would fail within 3 days. That just kind of gives us very good feeling about the sort of moral compass of this person who does that. And in our opinion, it's totally disgusting and disrespectful to Ukrainian population. So we just want to bring this so everybody sort of is aware that the Ukrainian president is not viewed or is not perceived the same way internally, the way it's sort of portrayed by the, let's say, Western media as sort of the sole defender of Ukraine. In Ukraine, it's very clear majority of population is fighting not for Ukrainian president, but for their own land, for their own self-determination. And in many ways, he's not part of that equation of self-determination. You can almost say this is basically kind of like a free rider who basically uses people's desire for freedom to his own advantage. And so this is just kind of like one political piece of information that we would like to share, so you have better understanding of sort of internal politics, and also this will tie in later. We are trying to prepare discussion of how Russian propaganda is trying to kind of portray the situation in Ukraine to the conservatives in the West, and more specifically in the US. We didn't discuss it but early August, President of Hungary went to the US, and he met with a representative from the CPAC, I think it's called the Conservative Political Action Committee. So basically, it's just influential political group that sort of that defends conservative agenda. And there, basically, Orban was relaying the message on behalf of the Russia, on the Russian president, not so much even Russian president. It's really just Russian top, where essentially they were trying to appeal to the conservatives by basically saying, okay, we are of the same kind, we are of the same blood, and in Ukraine, this is people in Ukraine completely, I would say, on the opposite spectrum of the conservatism, and therefore you shouldn't be supporting them. And as we all know, there's election coming up in the U.S. in November. So the Russia's propaganda hope is that that one and basically the idea is that Republican Party, which to a great extent represents this conservative views, will win, and that will allow Russia to influence the actions of the U.S. and basically stop support of Ukraine, because the message is, okay, you supporting corrupt Ukrainian president, corrupt Ukrainian government. So it's obviously conveniently being admitted that the support is actually, it is support for Ukrainian population who fights for its own freedom. So this is hopefully kind of more or less clear the sort of the big sort of picture, big game that's being played by all different actors. If you have questions, then ask those in the comment section, and I'll try to make it clear if I haven't made it clear. Hopefully, this is not confusing to everyone. Hopefully, everybody kind of more or less understands what I'm trying to say, and I'll try to discuss this later once I get a little bit more time in more detail. This whole sort of situation, because we approaching this November elections, where probably the Democratic majority will lose its majority, and so and there will be probably changes because Republican majority probably still largely in support of Ukraine, because a lot of them still understand that this is not sort of war, this is not regional war between Ukraine and Russia. This is more of Russians attempt to challenge status quo and status quo of America in the world. And so there is that clear, but there is also a strong group within the Republican Party that sort of more sides with this isolationists. Sorry, they try to be isolation. Basically, they would like to isolate themselves and the US, and sort of kind of say, oh, we're going to focus on internal problems, which is very convenient for Russia and for Russian war machine, because obviously that leaves Ukraine pretty much defenseless against the current Russian attack. So again, this was just a little bit of preview, but the most important part of it is this absolutely disgusting message by Ukrainian president, who actually tried to justify his own lies, that the lies are for the good of everyone, and otherwise it would have been even worse. And this is we view this as completely unacceptable. Now let's actually switch to the walks through the front line. Let's look what's going on in general. There's a lot of sort of fighting, but there is not much progress by either side in general. That's a summary for today. in many ways we feel that, and we could be wrong, but this is sort of subjective feeling that Russian attacking troops are they're losing their steam. We always said that they're lacking in manpower, in infantry support, and it does feel very subjectively that lack of infantry went below some kind of critical level that allowed them to still move a little bit forward, even meaning that Russian artillery works, destroys, and then Russian infantry, few in number, still manages to capture some territories. It seems that this level, like the number of infantry went below critical level that allows to actually even let's say Russian artillery may destroy Ukrainian defenses or significantly damage them. There's still not enough infantry to effectively gain control over the ground. This is very subjective feeling, just based on the sort of how things are happening on the front line. That's where it's all coming. So in other words, we're not trying to say Russian artillery stopped inflicting heavy losses on the Ukrainian side. That's not what we're trying to say. They still inflict very heavy losses. It's just more sort of internal problem of the Russian troops in a way, and specifically lack of infantry. This is just a generic kind of like view, and then let's actually discuss a little bit this attacks in Crimea, in Jankoy, which is here, which is important railroad junction in Crimea to exit basically Crimea, that connects basically Crimea with sort of continental, Ukraine and Russia and so on. So there was a transformer that was severely damaged, the railroads. However, everything was, well, not everything, but at least railroad was repaired. And, maybe electrical locomotives cannot be used, but Russia has plenty of diesel locomotives. So basically, what this really means is these attacks, they don't create significant damage. It's very short. They short-lived. They more work as propaganda tools, but propaganda does not win the war, and that's a big problem. And we are clear why Ukrainian command is so focused on this superficial propaganda wins as opposed to actually doing sort of real actions that really move the needle in terms of making defenses for Russian side much more difficult. And specifically, we're talking about the bridges, right, which are still somewhat semi-functioning. At least some, apparently, that railroad bridge is still like functioning. And then all of this dam near Novomykhaylivka is somewhat still functioning. So the Russian Russian control infrastructure is still there, is still functioning, is still allowing to support Russian troops on Kherson bridgehead. Yes, it's much more difficult, worse, and so on, but still they can do it. And it seems to us that Ukrainian command is all over the place and more sometimes concerned with sort of this, pictures for TV, pictures for propaganda, as opposed to actually doing things that really maybe not so sexy, but will create actually opportunities down the road. So now let's actually do a quick walk through the front line in a clockwise fashion, starting from the north. So the situation along the state border here in the north is the same. Some, actually, maybe intensity even somewhat reduced. but same idea, exchange of artillery fire. Russian side is claiming that Ukrainian troops or Ukrainian command is sending commander groups to Russian territory to basically blow up railroads and so on. We don't have that information, but totally possible. Would not be surprised that that's happening. Now let's move to Kharkiv area. Things here are quiet. We don't have any confirmation of Russian capture of this village Udi. If you remember, there was attack towards this village, so there is no new any kind of confirmation. So we assume that attack actually failed. Nevertheless, as we discussed, Russian command managed to create some buffer along the border, especially in this call it like eastern section of it, where essentially Ukrainian troops managed to get to the state border at the end of May. So they were pushed back, as you can see. Now let's move south. Let's see what's going on on Izyum bridgehead. Things here were pretty quiet, pretty weak. So some low intensity Russian attack in the same area around village Maryinka. This is next to Dolina. So basically pretty weak, probably just more like a painting picture type of attack. Now let's move to North Donbass front line, because that's one of the most important areas. Here, the scale of attacks, it feels, went somewhat down. There are attacks, specifically more like infantry attacks. Obviously, artillery fire is kind of working, is the same level, but there were only a couple places where Russian troops were attacking, specifically the Velyka that we hear for the past probably week or 10 days all time. Then Russian troops unsuccessfully tried to attack Soledar and Bakhmutsk capture, and even then they themselves admit that they kind of hitting the wall here, and they really need to rethink approach how they attack it, because frontal attack just simply doesn't work in this area for them. So again, we may see something. Maybe Russian command is doing some kind of regrouping or trying to get more reserves, but based on what we know, it doesn't seem that they sort of worked on creating significant or sufficient reserves. Let's put it this way. So again, at this point, they seem to be like hitting the wall in Soledar and here in Bakhmut. At least that's what it looks at this point. And they kind of like out of ideas how to basically crack Ukrainian defenses in this area. So we'll see what happens. It doesn't mean that Ukrainian defense is stabilized and everything is under control. That's not what we mean, because the Ukrainian side is still weak, is still not capable to deal with Russian attacks. It's more of the problem on the internal Russian problem. Now let's move a little bit south, and attacks also again pretty weak only towards Zaitsevo, and that's pretty much it. Then there are somewhat new directions of attacks. As you can see, this is town Horlivka here, and Russian troops were attacking towards village Zalizne and also Mayorske in this area. So it seems that the purpose of these attacks is simply to push Ukrainian troops further from Horlivka. But again, attacks are in the area where there's still pretty well fortified Ukrainian defenses. That's one of the areas where the front line remains the same since the beginning of the war. So these attacks seem to us to be in many ways not very well thought out. Maybe this is just an attempt to see if there is weakness in Ukrainian defenses, which is strange given that these defensive positions are pretty well engineered, and before war, Ukrainian troops were digging in here for past 8 years. So again, somewhat unclear the sort of goals of these attacks, but this is the situation around this area. Then let's actually look what's going on west of Donetsk. So here it looks like the attacks are also somewhat bogged down. Basically, Russian troops more or less stuck here north of Avdiivka and kind of like southeast of Avdiivka. There is no new movement out of Piske. So, or at least that's what it seems that Russian troops also kind of, for now at least, stuck here. There's not really much movement in Maryinka, so essentially all of these main areas, there's basically stalemate for now in these areas, and that's why I was thinking that there is simply not enough Russian infantry to continue for the Russian machine to continue working. There were some reports that Russian troops managed to gain ground while attacking Novomykhaylivka here. So this is the only area where there is some apparently success by Russian troops. It's actually not clear to us. It's possible that there is fighting going on inside of the village for the control of the village, and Ukrainian troops might be in the process of losing control of this village. So this is the only kind of range in sort of or range in our thinking that there is not enough, that Russian troops got to the point that there is simply not enough infantry to continue to successfully continue what they were doing before. So it seems like this area is the only sort of exception so far. So we'll see it in the next couple of days. It will become very clear this if our sort of theory or hypothesis is true, or it was just some kind of regrouping by Russian command. It was just a short pause for a couple of days on the front line. Now let's continue moving. Let's just see what's going on the Zaporizhia front line. Things here is somewhat again static. The Russian troops tried to attack this Vugledar Pavlivka stronghold and also Velyka Novosilka. Didn't really work. We discussed that this 155th Naval Infantry Brigade, it was a main driving force here, and we mentioned that in many ways this basically airborne and naval infantry silo of the army are to some extent kind of like Ukrainian troops, basically equipment poor, motivation strong, but equipment poor, basically somewhat similar. So they kind of like meeting the likes, and for that reason apparently they not being able to make progress. So now let's actually jump to Kherson bridgehead and let's see what's going on here. Things are somewhat more or less similar here. There are some reports that Russian troops again tried to attack Ukrainian troops to destroy this bridgehead without success. So basically, Russian command is trying to, I would say, to recapture initiative here, or at least to kind of show, okay, we still have initiative on the Kherson bridgehead. In our view, the strategic initiative has been lost by Russian command here in this area, and it's sort of up in the air. Who will catch it? We'll see. It does seem to us that as long as Ukrainian command continues destroying these bridges across Dnipro River and Ingulets River, they will sort of catch that initiative by not doing really much, by just basically that initiative will fall into their hands, and they don't even need to do much basically, but that's going to take decent amount of time. That's all for today. Thanks for watching and listening, and until tomorrow, bye bye.